So, you're looking to purchase a tilt shift lens. You don't know which one to get, the 17 or the 24mm TFC by Canon. Well, in this week's video, we're going to look at both and compare them on a like-for-like basis. If you only had the budget for one, which one would you opt for? Now, of course, on the channel before, I have spoken about tilt shift photography way back, 4 or 5 years ago, here in Georgia, actually. However, I've never specifically compared these two lenses, and if you've only got the budget for one, it could be a topic that comes up time and time again. Recently, the price has collapsed on these lenses. It's come down loads, and both are now in the bracket of very high quality lenses for an affordable price. Of course, both will require the adapter to go with my Canon R5, but that is an obvious statement. Let's compare the two, let's get some shots, and I'm back in a familiar location here in Batumi, Georgia. I think the rain is following me around this autumn. In this particular location, it actually looks kind of atmospheric. It's kind of cool. Okay, so let's start off today by talking about the 17mm tilt shift lens. So it goes without saying, when using this lens, it gives you, of course, more height. Not just from your center column on your tripod, but of course from the lens itself too. I actually don't need to use all of this when I'm using the 17mm because the reach of it is much greater. Of course, it's 17mm. Now, I'm going to do all three shots pretty similar. I'm basically not going to move too much. I'm not going to change the perspective of my shot. I'm actually just going to change focal length and show you the kind of results. Now, when I actually shift this lens to the top, of course, that is one of the first, let's call it cons. Of course, ceilings can be stretched. You get more height, you get more reach with this lens from, say, a tighter space. But with that, if you're not careful, you can stretch ceilings out. In other words, you lift the lens up and it looks a little bit stretched on the top. And of course, same applies down below too. I've just created a panoramic, and of course both of these lenses gives me the ability to be able to create panos, shifting the lens top, middle, bottom, and actually joining those together in post. It's something that you've seen many times on this channel before. I'm doing that panoramic with both lenses, so I'm actually going to do it with the 17 and the 24. I've just completed the 17mm shot. What I just talked about, stretching the ceiling, that's actually caused by distortion, and if you're not careful, that can happen on the edges of the frame, as well as, of course, the ceiling and the floor. Now you'll see here in the shot that I've stitched together, the actual floor is stretched out. The tiles start to become longer when it's closer to the front element of the lens, and this is something that you need to bear in mind when using this lens. That is just observation more than a kind of con, I suppose. The big thing though is that this can get you out of tight spaces. Of course, if you're in kind of small pokey environments, little staircases, little hallways, or very tight small homes, say, and interiors, this lens can get you out of trouble. It can basically save your bacon, because when we combine that panoramic that we've just shot together, this gives us the ability to have 17mm of width, 11.5mm of height. And if we flip the camera and actually shift left, mid, right, it would be the opposite way round. It's quite a benefit, actually. It can get you out of a lot of trouble. Now the 17mm works in the same way as the 24. Of course, I've just used the adapter on the front of my Canon R5 to be able to put my older EF lenses onto my EOS R system. So in other words, my RF system. Fits nice and easy. There's no image loss in here. It's just a simple adapter with no kind of polarizer in it. However, of course, with the 17mm, another pro would be if you actually picked up the adapter that had the polarizer in it, that would give you the ability to have filters on this lens. Because this is bulbous, you have to get a kind of special cage to be able to put adapters onto this, to be able to put filters and CPLs. And that's a bit of a con too. That setup is incredibly expensive, and for that reason I'd say the 24mm is a more usable lens. To get the wow factor shots, the ones where you're in tight spaces, this is the one you want. I've actually already framed up a shot using the 24mm lens, and I'd say it's probably my go-to tilt shift lens. It's the one that I use mostly. Now, of course, it goes without saying that the optics on both of these lenses are superb considering the age. It's incredibly sharp in terms of all the way through the frame. It's actually, I'd say, a little bit sharper than a 17 at the edges, but in the centre, you'd probably never notice a difference. The 24mm, making a pano, gives you the equivalent of 18mm of height or width, and of course 24mm in the opposite orientation, in the opposite dimension. So in other words, if we're shooting a panoramic here, we've got top, middle, bottom, 18mm top to bottom, and then we've got 24mm of width, and vice versa. The other key things about the 24mm to mention is, of course, that it can take filters on the front here. Now, that might be something that's quite important to you, especially a CPL filter, you know, a polarizer filter, or NDs. Now, I don't particularly use NDs that much on here, but you could do that for externals of buildings, maybe modern architecture. But for me, shooting kind of relics, ruins, hidden gems, that kind of stuff, I don't really use that so often. I do use the CPL. In here we've actually got a lot of rain today and it's wet, and you actually could use the polarizer filter to kind of cut through any glare that you're obtaining in your images. So that's one advantage of the 24 over the 17. The other thing is I don't tend to crop as much with the 24. I kind of shoot it in camera exactly as I see it because of the focal length is perfect for the location.
All my life I was looking for a sign. Wasn't sure where to find a peace of mind.
Now the optics of both of these lenses are superb, and the 17mm is no different. It's incredibly sharp throughout the frame, front, middle and back. The only difference here is maybe a little bit of softness in those corners when you're shifting to the full capabilities of the lens. So in other words, if you're pushing this out to the full height, you essentially going to get a little bit of image quality loss there. So I always advise just rolling it back ever so slightly. There's notches on the lens here, and you can just take it back one notch. When you combine that together, it gives you a much sharper end result. And I'd say the same thing about the 24mm too. Now, what about flare? Well, of course, the 17mm has this bulbous front element, and there has been occasions when I've been in locations, particularly when I photographed that mosque series in Turkey the last couple of years, where you're in these sort of locations where light's coming in a window, say top left, top right, and of course this attracts flare. I mean, look at this thing, of course it attracts flare, it attracts all the light, and with that, it also attracts all of the dust, and you've got to be careful with that front element. It's the trade-off of having that super extra piece of width that's required to get you out of tight situations. Okay, so what about flare on the 24mm TSE? Well, to be honest with you, this thing handles flare perfectly well, and it's got the added bonus of the fact that it can actually have a lens hood that can go actually on the front here to kind of help mitigate some of that flare if you're going to get it. Now, it's a little bit tricky sometimes to get on, but once it's there, you can see it gives you this kind of nice hood, and that would of course then stop any light coming in on that side. So again, same thing, it's a little bit more versatile than that 17mm. You could get something for that lens, but it's a bit more tricky and of course a little bit more expensive. The other thing, of course, I really like about the 24 is when you put it with an adapter, it becomes a 35mm tilt shift lens. Now that is pretty awesome too. I'm actually going to do that now to capture a second shot, so let's do that. Now, you can say to me, yes, but you can use the adapter with the 17, and of course you can. But the thing about that is why would I bother? Why would I bother doing it when I've got the 24mm lens? There's no need. So for me, this is the benefit, because this lens becomes a whole new look and feel when you stick it on the front. So the compression is the same on all of these lenses, 17, 24, or using the adapter to make it 35. That's all to do with kind of where you're standing, where you're moving, and where you're actually positioning yourself. Now, of course, when I'm using the adapter like this, I am losing a stop of light, but it's not detracting at all from the quality of the TSE. I've never noticed a single bit of difference with it when I'm shooting it in this manner. So in that case, I'd say this lens is the more versatile option, the 24mm. If I had a choice and I only had the money, the budget for one of these lenses, I would probably go for the 24mm on the basis that realistically it's going to give you more flexibility. The filters, the fact you can put CPLs on it and NDs, and of course use this adapter to get almost 2 lenses for the price of 1, which is actually amazing, really. So you might say to me, well, James, what about the price? Well, to be honest with you, the 17mm used to be incredibly expensive, and I would always say to Camera Club Talks, on that basis, this is the one to go for. You could get off-brand versions, Samyang for example. You could also get older version of this one. This is the Mark II version of this lens. Even though that's quite old, the Mark I version is even older, and of course comes in much, much cheaper. It doesn't have the tilt capabilities that this one has, so it's a slightly cheaper lens. But to get you started in architecture photography with tilt shift, you had that option. However, in 2024 things have changed dramatically because the price of both this, the 17mm, and the 24 have come down compared to just a few years ago. You can pick these up for bargain prices. Somebody on the workshop here in Georgia actually picked up this, the 24mm, for around €700, which is, I think, pretty cheap these days. And I got this replacement 17mm from Germany last year for €1,200. But which one is the lens for you? Let me know in the comments below. So finally, what about the future? What does the future hold for TSE photography? Well, nobody quite knows yet. That's the sort of main short answer to a very long question. There's been patents actually made for new versions, RF versions of these 2 lenses for a while, but they've been holding off. They're not very in-demand lenses, particularly the 17mm lens. Most photographers that would want to buy one probably have already got the older version, and to be honest with you, the quality of it with the adapter, it doesn't really make much sense to spend what it's going to cost to have an autofocus version of one of these lenses. There is going to be new stuff, I think, in the future, and probably we're not that far off actually seeing that come into fruition, but ultimately, who knows what's around the corner. So we've got a couple more videos here from Georgia to come, and actually then I'm going to depart to Istanbul. I've got 3 weeks just back at home before I'm then in Cyprus too. So the channel is going to be fast moving right through the winter, it seems. A couple more videos from here in Georgia and a couple of new locations to boot. Got any comments, leave them below. Until next time, see you all very soon.